In their first game of the season at San Diego State, UC San Diego shot 18% from the field and 24% from three. Now, if you just heard these stats and consider the level of competition they were going up against in that game, you would probably think that UC San Diego got absolutely blown out in this game. But despite how awful they played offensively in that first half, they remained resilient and they nearly won that game against San Diego State. And since that opening night loss, they've gone 30-3. And what I like so much about this team is that they can win in a variety of ways. They rank 8th in three-pointers made, they move the ball very well, the ball doesn't stick, they're not over-dribbling. And then defensively, even though they are a smaller team, they rank 3rd in the nation in steals. And when you watch them play, you can just see how well they communicate with one another. They're just playing on a string defensively and filling up the gaps, getting in passing lanes, forcing turnovers, making it hard for bigger teams to enter the ball into the post because they're just all on the same page and they're all moving as one, forcing turnovers and then getting out in transition. On top of the fact that they force a lot of turnovers, they also commit the fewest turnovers in the nation. So with UC San Diego, we have a team that's very resilient. Even when things aren't going well for them, they don't get rattled and allow the game to get out of control. Offensively, they move the ball well, shoot the three well, and then defensively, even though they lack size, they really play well together, force a lot of turnovers, and they don't make costly mistakes themselves because they rarely turn the ball over when they're on offense. Now, when there's a lesser-known team like UC San Diego, the question always comes up about who they played during the regular season and if they actually had a somewhat difficult schedule. And I'm not going to try to sell you on this idea that they played in some powerhouse conference, but I do think that their conference is actually pretty underrated. In order to prove this, I'm going to cite the Ken Pom rankings. And if you're unfamiliar, Ken Pom is basically a site that does advanced analysis of all the college basketball teams, and they rank all the college basketball teams based on those advanced metrics. So I'm not going to act like it's a foolproof system, but I do think it gives a fair idea of the level of talent that's on a given roster and on a given school. So for reference, there are 364 teams that were ranked on Ken Pom this year. UC San Diego, they ranked 36th. And then if we look at some of the teams in their conference, UC Irvine ranks number 66, Northridge is 107, UC Riverside ranks at 145, and then UC Santa Barbara ranks at 147. And even those last two teams, UC Riverside and UC Santa Barbara, they're actually ranked higher than 9 tournament teams this year. And then looking at a team like UC Irvine again, they went 28-6 during the season, and they're ranked higher on Ken Pom than teams like Yale, Lipscomb, and High Point, 3 teams that have also been some popular upset picks in this year's bracket. And while UC San Diego's out-of-conference schedule wasn't too difficult, they did have that narrow loss to San Diego State on the road, like I touched on. And then they had a really good win at Utah State earlier this season. And Utah State went 26-7 this year. They're a 10 seed in the tournament, so that's a really good win for them. So UC San Diego plays in a pretty underrated conference. On the season, they're 30-4. They're currently on a 15-game winning streak, and they won all their conference tournament games by double digits. Now, their first-round matchup is going to be against Michigan, and just like UC San Diego, Michigan is hot right now, and they're playing some really, really good basketball. They just won the Big Ten Conference tournament, and they beat some really, really good teams on the way to doing that. They beat Purdue, Maryland, and Wisconsin. But when I look at this matchup, there are a few key things that have me leaning towards UC San Diego. The first thing that stands out to me is the turnovers. Michigan is a team that turns the ball over a ton. They're one of the worst teams in the nation as far as taking care of the ball. And as I mentioned earlier, UC San Diego ranks 3rd in the nation in steals. They force tons of turnovers. So I think they could really exploit that weakness in Michigan's game. And then when you look at things the other way around, Michigan doesn't get a lot of steals. Again, that's another weakness of theirs. And UC San Diego commits the fewest turnovers in the nation. So in March Madness, when possessions are so key, I think the fact that UC San Diego could possibly get more possessions, force more turnovers, and take care of the ball better, that could be one of the key factors in this game. And it could be one of the main ways that UC San Diego is able to pull off this upset. Another advantage that UC San Diego has is the three-point shooting. They rank 8th in the nation in three-pointers made, whereas Michigan, although they're not some horrible, terrible three-point shooting team, they're pretty mediocre. And so if UC San Diego is able to win the possessions battle because they're forcing more turnovers and they're not committing as many turnovers as Michigan, and then on top of that, they're hitting more threes and getting more points per possession that way, I think that can be a real recipe for success and allow them to get this win over Michigan. Michigan definitely has the size advantage. They have 2 7-footers in their starting lineup, whereas UC San Diego's tallest player is 6'8". So I understand this idea that Michigan could just dominate them on the interior, get a bunch of offensive rebounds, and just really have an advantage size-wise. But I think it's worth mentioning that in their conference tournament final against UC Irvine, UC San Diego went up against a 7-foot center in Ben Moishton, and they held him to 10 points, 7 rebounds on 3 of 7 shooting, and 4 turnovers. So even though UC San Diego is a smaller team, they make up for that because they help each other out. Their rotations are always on time, they rotate over at the right times to force turnovers, and then when it comes to rebounding, they gang rebound and they all help each other out. So although Michigan has the size advantage, I don't think that that advantage is going to be as pronounced as UC San Diego's advantage in three-point shooting, taking care of the ball, and then forcing turnovers themselves. And then in the next round, they'd either go up against Texas A&M or Yale, and I would take UC San Diego over Texas A&M just because of the same weaknesses that Michigan has. And then in the case of Yale, I just think that UC San Diego is the better defensive team, and that would allow them to get the win in that matchup. It's also worth mentioning that UC San Diego only became a Division I team in 2020. And so this season is actually their first year of eligibility to play in the NCAA tournament. And some people might look at that fact and just assume that they're not ready for this moment. But in January, ABC News actually did a story on this team. And when they were interviewing the staff and the players on this team, they all talked about how important getting to the tournament was for them. And so as a result, they treated every game with such a high level of importance. This is a team who is very unselfish, well-rounded, and because getting to the tournament means so much to them, they've been locked in all season long. All of the players and coaching staff are on the same page, and they're winning basketball games in a very convincing way. And for all of those reasons, I have UC San Diego as this year's Cinderella team, and I'm excited to see how this program grows in the coming years.